You won't believe what happened at my sister's engagement party. One minute, I was holding a glass of champagne, smiling for the family photos like everything was normal. The next, she had me by the arm, dragging me outside, spitting words that cut deeper than anything she's ever said. She thought it was private. She thought no one else could hear. But her fiancé did. He caught every word. Now she's begging me to cover for her, to lie for her, to save the wedding she almost destroyed herself. I need to explain something before I dive into what happened that night. My sister and I, we've never been close. On paper, we're the picture-perfect siblings, family photos with matching outfits, Christmas cards, even vacations where we smiled at the camera like best friends. But behind all of that, there's always been this invisible scale between us. She was the golden child, the one with perfect grades, perfect hair, perfect everything. I was just there. Growing up, I learned early that my role in the family was supporting character. If she got the spotlight, I was the background. If she won the medal, I clapped the loudest. And honestly, I didn't always mind. It was easier to keep the peace than to challenge the balance. But here's the thing. When someone gets used to being the golden one, they also get used to treating everyone else like they're disposable. My sister mastered that art. I can't count the number of times she's borrowed money and never paid it back, taken credit for my ideas in front of relatives, or laughed at my expense because it made her look clever. Every time, I told myself to let it slide. It's family, I'd think. Don't start a war. So when she got engaged, the entire family threw themselves into the celebration. It wasn't just her night, it was their collective victory. My parents acted like they'd won a trophy. My aunts planned toasts, my cousins bought new dresses. And me? I showed up because that's what you do. You show up, you smile, you clap when they announce the engagement ring. The party itself was overwhelming. Big rented hall, soft golden lights, tables with more food than anyone could eat. Everyone buzzing with excitement, drinking, laughing, retelling the story of how he proposed. I stood off to the side most of the night, sipping my drink, watching her work the room like a politician. She was radiant, yes, but more than that, she was in control. Every laugh she gave, every compliment, it was all rehearsed. She had built this image of herself that was untouchable. And maybe that's why she came for me. Because no matter how carefully she curated the mask, she couldn't stand the idea that I existed in the background, reminding her of the parts she couldn't control. I remember exactly how it started. She walked up with that too bright smile, the one she uses when people are watching. She took my arm lightly, like a sister would, and whispered, "Come outside with me for a second." I didn't think twice. I figured maybe she wanted a moment away from the noise. Maybe she wanted to actually connect, for once in our lives. I was wrong. Out there, under the cold night air, her whole face changed. The sweetness dropped. The voice that had just been laughing inside turned sharp, almost venomous. She didn't just take off her mask, she smashed it right in front of me. And that's where everything began to unravel. The night air hit me like a slap, cooler than I expected after hours inside that crowded banquet hall. For a second, I thought maybe my sister really did just want to breathe. She let go of my arm, and I rubbed the spot where her nails had dug in through my shirt. She turned to me, the glow from the party leaking through the glass doors behind her, music muffled now like we were standing inside a snow globe. Then her smile vanished. "You couldn't just stay in the background, could you?" she hissed. I blinked. "What are you talking about?" She folded her arms, tilting her head the way she always does when she's about to deliver a blow. "Inside, you standing there like you're miserable, like you're making a point of reminding everyone that you're the family failure. Do you even know how pathetic you look?" Her words landed like punches, fast and unrelenting. I felt my chest tighten, but I forced myself to stay still, to not give her the reaction she wanted. "I wasn't doing anything," I said, my voice low. "I was literally standing by the food table." She laughed, sharp, cold, nothing like the fake giggles she had used inside with her guests. "Exactly. Standing. Hovering. Making people wonder what's wrong with you. And you think that doesn't reflect on me?" And there it was. The truth, stripped bare. This wasn't about me. It never had been. It was about how my existence, just existing, threatened her perfect little narrative. "I'm not here to compete with you," I said, heat rising in my throat. "This is your night. I'm not trying to ruin anything." She stepped closer, her perfume cloying, her eyes sharp as glass. "You ruin things by breathing, don't you get that? You're like a stain on the family. And now that I finally have something good, something perfect, I will not let you drag me down with your sad little presence. My hands curled into fists at my sides. Not because I wanted to hit her, but because it was the only way to keep steady. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I'm not doing this with you, I said, trying to turn back toward the hall. But she grabbed my wrist again, nails digging in. You'll do exactly what I say. You'll smile when people ask about me. You'll say nice things. And if my fiancé ever asks about the way I talk to you, her grip tightened, you'll tell him he misheard. You'll lie for me. Because if you don't, I swear, you won't just lose me. You'll lose this family. Her words froze me in place. I wanted to shout, to shake her off, to finally tell her how small she'd made me feel all these years. But the fear, not of her, but of being cut off from the only family I'd ever known, held my tongue. And that's when I heard it. A shuffle of shoes on the stone path behind us. A sharp intake of breath. I turned my head, and there he was. Her fiancé, standing barely 10 feet away, his face pale in the half-light, his eyes fixed on her hand gripping my wrist. She hadn't realized he was there. But I had. And in that frozen moment, the perfect mask she had worn all night wasn't just slipping. It was shattering, right in front of both of us. But someone else heard her too, and it wasn't me who was left speechless. For a few endless seconds, none of us moved. My sister's grip slackened, but she didn't let go. Her fiancé just stood there, framed by the glow spilling out from the banquet hall, like he'd stepped out of a different world and into ours. Hey, he said finally, his voice careful. Too careful. Everything okay out here? I could tell from the way his eyes flicked between us, her hand on my wrist, my clenched jaw, that he already knew the answer. My sister recovered first. She dropped my arm like it burned her and forced a smile so wide it looked painful. Of course, we were just reminiscing. You know how siblings get. She even gave a little laugh, one of those fake ones that's too light, too airy. It hung in the cold air like smoke. Her fiancé didn't laugh. He just stared at her for a long moment before nodding slowly. Right? Reminiscing. Then his eyes shifted to me. And for the first time all night, someone actually looked at me. Not through me, not around me, not as the afterthought sibling, but directly at me. His brow furrowed slightly, like he was trying to read something in my expression. I opened my mouth to speak, then shut it again. What could I even say? Yeah, just reminiscing about how she called me a stain on the family. I swallowed hard, feeling the words pile up in my throat, heavy and useless. Inside, the music changed, a love song, something people could slow dance to. Guests cheered. Someone probably tapped a glass with a fork. The celebration carried on, oblivious. But out here, the air was dense, brittle. My sister touched his arm lightly, the way she always did when she wanted to reel him back in. Come on, she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. Let's go back inside. People will wonder where we are. But he didn't move. He kept his eyes on me a second longer, his jaw tightening like he was about to say something. I felt the shift in my chest then, not relief, not anger, but something else. Something like validation. For once, I wasn't the only one seeing her without the mask. I'll be in there in a minute, he said finally, his tone flat. That threw her off. I saw the flicker in her face, surprise, maybe even panic, but she masked it quickly, giving him another tight smile before slipping back inside. The doors closed, muffling the music again, and suddenly it was just me and him. The cold night. The silence stretching too long. He shoved his hands into his pockets, exhaled slowly, and said, Does she always talk to you like that? My stomach flipped. The question was casual on the surface, but the weight behind it was crushing. I wanted to answer honestly. I wanted to unload years of being her shadow, her punching bag, her prop. But fear locked my tongue again. Family loyalty versus raw truth. The old script versus the new possibility. I started then stopped. My throat burned. His eyes narrowed slightly, searching my face. Because that didn't sound like reminiscing. The silence between us stretched, heavy and sharp. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't just curious. He was looking for confirmation. He already suspected. And I was the only one who could either validate it or protect her. Then I realized he wasn't walking away. The silence stretched between us, thick as the fog of our breath in the cold. I shoved my own hands into my pockets, trying to anchor myself, but my pulse was hammering like I'd just sprinted. He wasn't leaving. That much was clear. He wanted answers. Look, I said finally, my voice shaky even though I tried to sound calm. You don't need to worry about me. It's her night. I don't want to ruin anything. He tilted his head, studying me the way someone studies a stranger they've just realized isn't who they thought. That's not what I asked. The weight of his gaze was unbearable. I glanced back toward the glowing windows of the hall where people were clapping and laughing, completely oblivious. My sister was probably back inside already, flashing that perfect smile, convincing everyone she was the most gracious bride-to-be on the planet. But he had heard her. He had seen her. And now he was looking at me like he needed me to either confirm his worst suspicions or erase them. She was upset. I muttered, my words barely more than vapor in the night air. Upset, he repeated, his tone flat. That wasn't upset. That was venom. I've never heard her talk like that. I winced. The shame hit me like a punch to the gut, hot and suffocating. Because the truth was, I had heard her talk like that all my life. Maybe not always with those exact words, but with the same edge, the same sharpness that left cuts you couldn't see. And part of me hated myself in that moment. Hated how conditioned I'd become to normalize it, to excuse it, to let it slide because that's just how she is. I tried to breathe, but the air felt jagged in my lungs. It's not the first time, I admitted, the words trembling as they left me. Something flickered in his eyes. Not surprise, not exactly. More like confirmation of something he had been suspecting for a while, but couldn't prove. He nodded slowly, pressing his lips together. I thought so, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I asked, my voice cracking just enough to betray the swirl of fear inside me. He sighed, glancing down at the ground, then back at me. I've seen flashes of it. Little things. How she snaps at waiters when she thinks no one's listening. How she talks about her friends behind their backs. I kept telling myself it was stress, or nerves, or just temporary. But tonight, he shook his head. Tonight I saw it. Really saw it. I felt like the ground was tilting beneath me. All these years, I thought it was just me. That maybe I deserved it. That maybe I was overly sensitive. And here he was, confirming the thing I had buried for so long. It wasn't in my head. I don't know what to say, I whispered. Don't say anything, he replied firmly. Just tell me this. Is this who she really is? The question sliced me open. My throat burned, my eyes stung. I wanted to protect him from the truth, to protect myself from the fallout. But the words came anyway. Yes, I said, barely audible. That's who she is when the mask is off. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breathing, ragged and uneven. Then, to my shock, I felt something strange swell in my chest. Relief. A twisted kind of relief, like letting go of a weight I'd been carrying for years. He nodded again, slower this time, like each movement carried the weight of a decision forming in his mind. Thank you, he said finally. Just 2 words, but they nearly knocked the wind out of me. Because no one had ever thanked me for telling the truth about her. Usually, I was punished for it. I looked away, blinking back the sting in my eyes. My hands trembled in my pockets, and I clenched them into fists to stop the shaking. He spoke again, softer this time, almost to himself. I don't know if I can marry someone who talks to people like that. The words made my chest tighten, but not out of fear, out of shock. Because for the first time, the consequences weren't landing on me. They were landing on her. And yet, a part of me hesitated. This was my sister. My blood. Was I really going to let her world collapse because I confirmed what he already suspected? But another part of me, the part that had been dragged outside, called a stain, humiliated, whispered back. She did this to herself. He straightened then, his jaw set, his eyes steady. I need to think, he said simply. And with that, he turned and walked back toward the hall, leaving me frozen under the night sky. I stood there, heart hammering, watching the door swing shut behind him, and realized something I never thought I'd feel. I wasn't alone in this anymore. And that's when he told me something I never expected to hear. The next day, my phone buzzed with a message I wasn't expecting. It was from him. Can we talk? Just us. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. My first instinct was to ignore it. Pretend the night before hadn't happened. Pretend the air hadn't cracked open and exposed what we both saw. But my fingers were already typing back before I could overthink it. Okay. Where? We met at a small cafe across town. Neutral ground. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. When he saw me, he gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thanks for coming, he said, motioning to the seat across from him. I sat, suddenly hyper-aware of the clatter of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, the normalcy of the world moving around us. Like it had no idea that someone's entire future might be hanging in this conversation. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. I need you to be straight with me. Last night, it wasn't the first time she's done that to you, was it? I swallowed hard, staring at the swirl of foam on my cappuccino. Lying would have been easier, safer, but the exhaustion in his face told me he wasn't asking for convenience. He was asking for truth. No, I admitted softly. It's not the first time. He nodded like he'd expected that, but the tension in his jaw deepened. I thought so. I've noticed things. Small things, at first. She'd make jokes at your expense, but not the funny kind, the kind that cuts. She'd roll her eyes when you spoke, like you were wasting air. I told myself I was imagining it, or that maybe it was just siblings being siblings. He paused, shaking his head. But then it started happening with other people. A server at a restaurant who brought the wrong drink. A cashier who took too long with change. Even my mom once. Always this sharpness, like she needed to prove she was above them. Hearing it from him, from someone outside the family, someone who hadn't been marinated in years of, that's just how she is, made the pit in my stomach grow colder. It wasn't just me. It never had been. I kept brushing it off, he continued, voice low. I told myself it was wedding stress. Everyone gets snappy. But last night, he let out a long breath, leaning back in his chair. Last night, I couldn't unsee it. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, shame that he'd witnessed my humiliation, anger at my sister for never being able to hide her cruelty, and, underneath it all, something almost like relief. Finally, someone else knew the truth. She'll deny it, I said, my voice steadier now. She always does. She'll twist it until you feel like you're the crazy one. His eyes darkened at that. She already tried this morning. Said you misinterpreted her words. That it was just sibling banter. My chest tightened. That was her favorite trick. Rewriting reality until people doubted their own memory. What do you think? I asked cautiously. He looked straight at me then, no hesitation. I think she's been showing me who she really is. And I can't decide if I've been blind or just didn't want to see it. The honesty in his voice rattled me. For once, someone wasn't gaslighting me, wasn't minimizing it. He was naming it, seeing it. And that's when it hit me like a cold wave. This wasn't just my private family burden anymore. It was bleeding into his life, his future. He was about to marry her, to tie himself permanently to someone who, when the mask slipped, could be vicious. This wasn't just about me being her target. It was about what kind of person she really was, and how much longer he was willing to look away. This wasn't just about me anymore. I walked home that evening with the city lights blurring into the windshield, replaying every syllable she'd said. The words weren't loud anymore. They looped in my head like a broken record. You're a stain. You'll lose this family. The echo felt heavier than the chill in the air. When I shut the apartment door, the quiet around me was almost violent. It was as if the house itself expected me to choose, swallow it and keep the peace, or speak and break something that, for the rest of my life, might never mend. Family had always been the safe answer. Family paid the bills, showed up on birthdays, pretended everything was fine at funerals. Family was the net I'd always trusted. But that net had holes. Big ones. Holes she'd cut with a smile. The humiliation floated up again, not just last night, but 1,000 little slights stacked into one. And now there was another factor, the fiancé. He'd seen it. He'd heard her. His involvement turned something private into something with consequences beyond me. If I told the truth, his future would shift. If I lied, I would carry her lie. I'd be complicit in letting her pattern continue. I sat on the couch and felt the decision weighing on my chest like a physical thing. I thought about the bargain she offered on the patio. Lie for me, and I keep you. Keep the invitations, the family dinners, the small mercies of being included. It was a transactional cruelty. Punish me into silence in exchange for staying inside a loop that never served me. Anger rose first, hot and immediate. Then shame, because part of me recognized how many times I'd accepted this trade before. Beneath them, a quiet, stubborn pulse of something I hadn't felt in years, self-respect. It whispered that I could refuse, that preserving my dignity might be worth the price. I pictured him, the fiancé, looking at her with the soft confusion of someone trying to reconcile two faces. I pictured his leaving. I pictured our parents' disappointment. I pictured relief. The moral question sat in my lap like a stone. Protect her illusion and remain small, or tell the truth and risk losing everything I'd ever known. I couldn't sleep. I replayed the conversation again and again until the first light of morning, and by dawn I'd made a decision. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I finally wanted to stop being invisible. I spent sleepless nights planning. Finally, I knew what I had to do. The morning after my restless night, I told myself one thing: stay out of it. No matter what she did, no matter how tempting it was to finally unload years of buried resentment, I would keep my distance. Let her handle her own mess. I spent the day avoiding calls from my parents. They were still buzzing about the party, about how perfect it had been. My phone lit up with group messages filled with pictures of champagne glasses clinking, selfies with the happy couple, everyone dressed to the nines. In every photo, she glowed. You'd never know that an hour into the evening, she tried to crush me with her words. I almost convinced myself that maybe it would just fade. Maybe her fiancé would decide he'd imagined it. Maybe she'd gloss it over with her usual charm. Maybe the silence would be safer. But that illusion cracked when my doorbell rang. She stood there in her expensive coat, hair pulled back, sunglasses perched like armor. She didn't wait to be invited in. She pushed past me, heels clicking against the hardwood. "Why didn't you answer my calls?" she snapped, pulling off her sunglasses and tossing them onto the counter. I didn't have anything to say. I replied, trying to keep my tone flat. Her laugh was sharp. "Oh, you have plenty to say. You've just been waiting for this, haven't you? For someone else to finally see me lose my temper. Well, let me make this simple for you." She moved closer, lowering her voice even though we were alone. "He's going to ask you about last night, and you're going to tell him it was nothing. That I was stressed, that you misunderstood. Do you hear me?" I froze, gripping the back of a chair to keep steady. Why would I do that? Her eyes narrowed, that familiar flash of contempt flickering through. "Because if you don't, you'll regret it. You think mom and dad are going to take your side? Please. They'll call you jealous, bitter. They'll cut you off faster than you can blink. And then what will you have left?" There it was again, the transaction. My silence for my inclusion. My loyalty for her reputation. I wanted to tell her no, wanted to laugh in her face, but years of conditioning coiled around my throat. My mouth opened, and nothing came out. She leaned in closer, her voice a whisper now, dripping with venom. "You've spent your whole life in my shadow. Don't fool yourself into thinking you're suddenly important. You're not. You're useful. And if you want to stay even that, you'll play along." For a moment, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. My fists clenched, not in anger this time, but in desperation to hold on to the decision I'd made, the one thing I thought I could control. Finally, I forced the words out. "I'm not lying for you." Her face twisted, the mask slipping just enough to reveal the panic underneath. Then she scoffed, brushing past me toward the door. "We'll see," she muttered. "You always fold." The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with my pounding heart and the echo of her threat hanging in the air. For the first time, I realized something terrifying and liberating all at once. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing him. I thought it was over. I couldn't have been more wrong. For the next couple of days, the silence was almost eerie. No surprise visits. No late-night calls. No thinly veiled insults disguised as jokes. My sister stayed quiet, and for the first time in years, so did my parents. The family group chat was filled with the usual noise, memes from cousins, updates about errands, but nothing about me. Nothing about her. I almost let myself believe I'd dodged it. That maybe she'd decided to let it go, to spin the story her way and move on. I clung to that thought like a life raft, convincing myself that distance was safety. I even started to breathe easier. I went to work, ran errands, tried to let my mind settle. Every time the phone buzzed, my chest tightened, but it was always something mundane. A bill reminder. A coworker asking about schedules. But peace never lasts long in my family. It never has. On the third evening, just as I was settling onto the couch with dinner, my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Hey," a voice said, hesitant. "It's me." My stomach dropped. Her fiancé. "I didn't want to text you," he continued quickly. "I thought she might see it. But I need to ask you something, in person. Can we meet?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I glanced at the window, the streetlights flickering on. My heart picked up speed. He hadn't let it go. He hadn't brushed it off like I thought. He wanted the truth, and this time, there would be no half answers, no safe silences to hide behind. Yeah, I said, my voice unsteady. Just tell me when. As I hung up, a strange chill ran down my spine. The calm I tried to build around myself shattered in an instant. The storm wasn't over. It was just circling back, stronger. The calm didn't last long. We met at a quiet bar on the edge of town, the kind of place with dim lights and booths that swallowed sound. He was already there when I walked in, nursing a drink he hadn't touched. His face was drawn, shadows under his eyes making him look older than the man I'd seen smiling beside my sister at the party. "Thanks for coming," he said, standing halfway before settling back down. His voice was polite, but there was an undercurrent of urgency. I slid into the booth across from him, heart thudding. "You said you had questions." He didn't waste time. "I need you to be honest with me. What I heard the other night, was that normal?" My throat tightened. I stared at the condensation dripping down the side of my glass of water. The easy answer, the family-trained answer, was no. Say it was stress, say it was a misunderstanding, say anything but the truth. That was the script my sister drilled into me for years. But his eyes stayed locked on mine, steady, unblinking. "Please," he added quietly, "I need to know who I'm about to marry." The weight of his words landed hard. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about his entire future. I swallowed. "She's always been like that with me. Cruel when no one's looking. Charming when people are around. It's not new." His jaw tightened, and he leaned back, dragging a hand down his face. I thought so. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the hum of the neon sign outside. Finally, he exhaled, shaking his head. "I've been seeing red flags for months. Little things, the kind you explain away. But now, I can't unhear what she said. I can't pretend it didn't happen." I hesitated. "What are you going to do?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a sip of his drink, grimaced, and set it down hard. "I don't know. Part of me wants to confront her, demand she explain. But another part," he looked at me again, eyes weary. "Another part already knows the answer." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed against the table. A message from my mother lit up the screen. "Don't say anything to him. We're a family. Keep this in the family." My stomach dropped. They knew. Somehow, my sister had already run to them, spinning the story like she always did. And now the pressure wasn't just from her. It was from all of them. I shoved the phone back in my pocket, pulse racing. He noticed. "What was that?" I shook my head. "Nothing important." But my voice gave me away. His eyes narrowed. "She's already trying to cover this up, isn't she?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The silence said enough. He cursed under his breath, running a hand through his hair. God. And to think I almost proposed sooner. I thought she was everything I wanted. I felt a strange mix of pity and grim recognition. I knew exactly how it felt to be under her spell, to believe in the mask she wore. And I also knew the sickening relief of seeing it crack. "You deserve to know the truth," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "But she'll never admit it. Not to you, not to anyone. If you confront her, she'll twist it until you're the villain." His expression hardened. "Then maybe I need to hear it from you." The words lodged in my chest like a blade. Because this wasn't just about telling him what he'd already witnessed. This was about laying bare years of cruelty, about exposing the sister I'd been protecting by staying silent. I could feel the net tightening, her threats, my parents' messages, his desperate need for clarity. Whatever choice I made here would have consequences that couldn't be undone. The waitress appeared, dropping off another round of drinks we hadn't ordered. Neither of us touched them. The tension in the booth was suffocating. Finally, he spoke again, softer this time. "I'm not asking you to ruin her. I'm asking you to help me see clearly. Because if I marry her, and this is who she is, I don't think I'll survive it." His words cut deeper than anything my sister had said. Because in them, I heard the same exhaustion, the same quiet despair I'd lived with for years. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about protecting myself. It was about whether I was willing to let someone else walk into the same trap I'd been stuck in my whole life. What happened next made me question everything I thought I knew about loyalty. The messages from my parents didn't stop. First it was, "Don't overreact." Then it became, "She's stressed. You know how weddings are." And finally, blunt and suffocating. "If you say anything to him, you're destroying this family." Destroying the family. That was their favorite line. I stared at the words glowing on my screen until they blurred. The absurdity stung. She dragged me outside, ripped me apart, humiliated me, and somehow I was the threat. Not her. Me. By the end of the day, my phone had 30 missed calls. Half from my mother, half from my sister. I turned it face down, but the vibration buzzed through the table anyway, constant, insistent. When I finally answered, my father's voice was sharp, no greeting. Listen to me. Whatever you think you heard, you keep it to yourself. Do you understand? Families stick together. Don't you dare make a scene. I didn't make a scene, I said, my voice trembling. She did. And he heard it. This isn't on me. You're jealous, he snapped. You've always been jealous. Don't ruin this for her, because you're bitter about your own life. The words burned. Bitter. Jealous. The same labels they'd always slapped on me whenever I dared to speak up. I hung up before I could hear more. That night, the silence in my apartment was crushing. I sat in the dark, replaying everything. My sister's venom, her fiancé's searching eyes, my parents' voices twisting guilt into shackles. The weight of it pressed down until I could barely breathe. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was about to burn bridges I couldn't rebuild. Maybe I was about to lose not just my sister, but every thread of family I had left. And yet, wasn't I already lost? Because what kind of family demands your silence at the cost of your dignity? What kind of parents protect cruelty because it's easier than confronting truth? The thought spun in my head until it was unbearable. I pressed my palms against my face, shaking, fighting the urge to call him, to unload it all, to finally scream the truth. But fear was louder. Fear of exile. Fear of standing completely alone. I realized then that this was my lowest point. Not because of what she'd said, but because of the decision staring me down. Speak, and I might lose everyone. Stay silent, and I'd lose myself. For the first time, I truly understood what it felt like to be trapped. My phone buzzed again. Another message. From him this time. I need clarity. Please, meet me tomorrow. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding. I was standing at a crossroads with no safe path. Either way, something would break. That's when I realized what I had to do to end this once and for all. The next evening, I walked into my parents' living room with my heart in my throat. My sister was already there, perched on the couch like a queen on her throne. Her fiancé sat stiffly beside her, hands folded, his jaw tight. My parents hovered near the doorway, watching like referees pretending to be neutral. As soon as I stepped inside, my sister's eyes cut into me. We need to clear this up, she said quickly, before anyone else could speak. Her voice was honeyed, rehearsed, the same voice she used for guests and neighbors. There's been a misunderstanding. Her fiancé glanced at me, not her. I want to hear it directly. From both of you. My chest tightened. The room smelled faintly of coffee and the sharp tang of nerves. She laughed lightly, tossing her hair. He's making something out of nothing. You know how siblings fight. I just lost my temper for a second. She reached for her fiancé's hand, but he didn't take it. Her smile faltered for the briefest moment. Is that true? He asked me, his voice steady. Every pair of eyes in the room landed on me. My parents' warning texts echoed in my head. Don't ruin this. Families stick together. My sister's threat whispered behind them. You'll lose this family. I swallowed hard. My palms were damp. No, I said finally, my voice stronger than I expected. That's not what happened. My sister whipped her head toward me, eyes wide with panic. What are you doing? She hissed. I looked straight at her fiancé. She dragged me outside and told me I was pathetic. She said I was a stain on the family. She told me if you ever asked about it, I should lie. The words landed like stones in the middle of the room. For a second, no one moved. My sister's face drained of color, her mask slipping entirely. You're lying, she spat, her voice cracking. He's jealous. He's always been jealous. But her fiancé didn't look at me like he thought I was lying. He looked at her, and for the first time since I'd known him, his face was unreadable. Cold. Did you tell him to lie for you? He asked quietly. She stammered. I didn't, it's not. Answer me. He pressed, his voice rising just enough to cut through the silence. Her mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. The mask was gone. All that remained was desperation. He leaned back slowly, shaking his head. I heard enough that night to know what I needed to know, but I wanted to give you the chance to be honest. And you couldn't even do that. Tears welled in her eyes. She reached for him, her hand trembling. Please, you don't understand. It was just stress. I didn't mean. He stood, her hand falling uselessly against her lap. I can't marry someone who treats people like that. Especially her own family. His voice cracked on the last word, but his resolve was steady. My parents rushed forward, voices overlapping, excuses, protests, pleas for him to reconsider. But he was already at the door, slipping his coat on with finality. He paused just once, looking back at me. There was no anger in his eyes, only gratitude. A silent thank you for confirming what he already knew. And then he was gone. The room collapsed into chaos. My mother turned on me first, her face red. Do you realize what you've done? You've ruined everything. But for once, the words didn't cut me. They slid off like water. I looked at my sister, sobbing into her hands, and felt no guilt. Just a strange, quiet calm. Because for the first time in my life, I hadn't folded. I hadn't chosen silence. And the irony was bitter and sharp. All her life, she'd warned me that if I ever spoke up, I'd lose my family. But in this moment, watching her crumble, I realized something else. She was the one losing. Not me. For the first time, I wasn't the one begging.